Andrea has come from a background where she has established herself as a leader in all the different areas in which she's represented emergency management. But more than that, in the way she's applied the skills she had previous to emergency management in making her application of emergency management really work for her, and in her basically being able to work at global scales of leadership in organizations that most people would kill for, to be able to work in a position like that, especially working with Disney. I'm jealous of that. I forget Walmart, but Disney, I'd love to take with Disney. But ultimately, Andrea, you've actually, in your evolution of emergency management, you've stepped into multiple leadership roles. You've applied to the skills that you've learned in doing the emergency manager job. But more than that, you've actually helped promote the profession, which in turn helps promote the professional. So how has your leadership skill evolved as you went down your road to where you are today?
I would say it's evolved in many different ways, but always staying to the core of who I am, like going back to my first job in emergency management, just throwing my name in the hat, not having the background, but thinking I might have the abilities, the skills to do emergency management. Always like leaning on that sense of confidence of I can apply the skills that I have for this job. And so I'm so glad I always took that with me for each of as I moved up the ladder, so to speak. And one of the most important things as I moved up through the ladder is my first job. I wrote a list of things that I would not do when I was in charge, because there were certain things I didn't like that my boss was doing. And they're the basics. You think everyone, as when one says good boss, good leader, they don't take credit for somebody else's work. They don't yell at you. Like it was like the kindergarten rules of things. And I, to this day, I kid you not, Dan, I look at that every quarter to make sure I'm following Andrea's list of things she will not do when she's in charge. Because now running my own company, I'm obviously in charge. And why I bring that up, because I think that's something that's really important to a leader, especially a leader of people, is you have to remember that you were in their shoes at one point. And how you come off, how you talk to them, and even if it's having to have a difficult conversation, just remembering how you would like to receive that information and being a human is so important, incredibly basic, but so important. And I just never wanted to lose that. And I always felt a little bit like a zoo animal in emergency management because I was different. I didn't come from like a first responder background. And I just worked my way up, taking new opportunities. And that's how I worked my way up, is taking jobs a lot of people didn't want. And I never wanted somebody, especially if they worked for me, to not feel that they were encouraged and supported. So I feel my entire job is to ask, and it didn't matter if I was at Disney or with FEMA, is to make sure my team that is supporting the job that needs to get done in that mission, that they have everything they need to do their job that day. And I need to constantly be asking myself that. And if I have to have a tough conversation, I had to lay off almost 50% of my team at FEMA, because that's how FEMA works. They downsize the mission, and so you downsize your staff as the recovery goes. It's really hard. And at the time, laying off folks into a really bad economy. This is right after the housing crisis. And so it's hard to have those conversations, but if you do it directly and with compassion, and then help I set up a whole like job training and skill training and social media training, how to make your own brand, and to help every single one of them that I had to lay off got another job. And so if you look at it from the lens of remembering where you came from, it helps you be a much better leader, because then you lead with your heart. And it's my goal, Dan, to never forget that and to always present that way. And I think it makes me more successful. I've had amazing jobs, to the point where my accountant thought I was a little nuts when I told him I was going to start my own business. He said there's few people he knows that would be leaving the salary, but I had confidence I could do it, because I'm building a company that I want to work for and that I want other people to work for. And I care so much about this profession. I feel I want to always represent that I'm a steward of it. And that's why I empower my staff, call me out. If I'm coming off as a jerk or something, I want you to call me out, because having that transparency of communication is just critical.
The communication part is really cool. And I actually want to talk a little bit more about that in a second, but I do want to touch on one thing you said is the confidence part of it, because a lot of it does come from the confidence, the confidence to actually take that first step and say, I'll do this, or whether I know what I'm doing or not, I'm going to try it. Having that confidence to really step into a role where you are looked at as a leader or are leading an effort, it is one of those things that you have to actually develop that. It's not, sometimes some people it's natural. It really is. You look at it, some people have a natural confidence, some others don't. And also depends on their level of, and I've been saying, utilizing it this way, is that there are extroverts, there are introverts.
Oh yeah.
And there are a lot of emergency managers are introverted, but emergency management, practicing it is an extroverted position. Like, you have to be extroverted. And what I call myself is an omnivert. I can transition to, I'm an introvert by nature, but I can transition to an extroverted personality when I need to do my job, and when I need to engage others, when I need to step into, when I'm teaching a class, when I'm doing this with engaging with others and trying to really put myself out there more. That's an intentional thing. It doesn't just have, so that confidence that you may have to pretend for some time that you are as confident as you are portraying yourself to be. That doesn't mean you can't do the job. It doesn't mean you're not qualified. And as you said, just taking the chance to put your name down on as a candidate for the Disney job, a lot of people didn't do that because they didn't feel they were there. But you did, and you took that confidence and that step and said, I can do that. And I think that's where we need to be more as emergency managers. We need to look at ourselves more in that way and say, I can do that, or I'm going to do that. Not necessarily I can. There's a difference between saying I can and doing it. The can and will are two different things. And I can do a lot of things, but will I? And so to be able to say, yeah, I can do that, but will you do it? And emergency, I feel like leadership is doing it, is taking the action and doing it. And that confidence comes from the more you do it, the better you start out. Everything you start out at, you're probably going to start out, you're not going to be very good at it. But the more you do it, the better you get, and the easier it becomes to do it. And that's the same thing as leadership and communication. It's a skill. It's something that you develop and you hone and you get better at. And you say, I didn't do that well. I'll revamp it and do it again and do better at it. And it's just like, before we went to start recording, I said, I'm referring to it more as an art. It really is an art.
Yeah.
I mean, I paint a sucky picture. I learn what I did wrong and I do it again. And it's all different in how we apply what we do. But the fact of it is, and I want to relate that back to what you said, is service. Most emergency management professionals are in it for service. We want to serve others. We have servant mindset. We have a servant heart, and we want to serve others. And the fact that you've gone back to owning your own business so you can be of more service, that's true leadership. But it's also helping not only promote the individual that does the job, it promotes the profession in how we see it. And this is something I want to touch on later, not right now, but the consulting aspect of owning your own business in emergency management, and how more people or more business owners in emergency management, more private consulting companies are really helping drive the profession forward. But I want to talk about it towards the end. What I really would like to get to is the communication part, you said, is being able to identify where you are strong and where you are weak, and showing that communication. Where is it that you've found the most growth, and where did you get the inspiration for that growth as it relates to how you communicate with others in leadership?
Really hit home what you said, Dan, about just go for it, because the only way you're ever going to get confidence is if you try for it. If you just say, hey, I could do that, that's almost like a special place in heck, if you ask me, because if you got to put yourself out there. So before the Disney job, I had been applying for jobs in the private sector. I got 123 rejections before I got the job with Disney over a year period. 123 rejections, but I got the job at Disney. And so and that's tough, right? It's tough to keep getting a no. And a lot of times with no feedback, you don't know. But if you just keep trying, that's the only way you build confidence. And I would say the same thing with communication, is if I, as a leader, and I usually just matched my leadership over bosses that I've had that I really liked, the leader that comes around back pre-COVID, right, comes around, checks in, and folks, how you doing, just engaging, just the simple seeing how you're going, and you talk through any issues, and then would obviously have the pop-up meetings with staff and talk through projects, but just making sure there's touch points. And then comparing that with the leader that just says, hey, I have an open door. Come and see me if you have problems. That doesn't build that connection, because you don't, if somebody's got the title, the director or vice president or whatever it is, you don't want to bother them. They're too busy. And so it's really the burden on the leader. It's a cop out to say you have an open office. You got to get up and you got to go out and you got to see how people are doing, and don't take fine for an answer. You have to pull it out of people. Most people aren't fine. They're either great or they're struggling, and trying to build that rapport up. But you got to get out there and communicate. But I predominantly through my career have a lot of times been the only female in the space. And some of my environments weren't awesome. I didn't want to talk to people. I wasn't encouraged, but I had to put my big girl pants on and say, I got to get out there and show them the value of just being one present, and then in having engaging conversations. And if it's not a positive conversation, asking those questions and then putting boundaries, right? You know what? That's another thing that a leader has to do, is if someone's being rude and disrespectful, you got to call them out. And it's the more I did that, and I would say, especially working with FEMA and external affairs, and having a microphone put in front of you is incredibly intimidating. But the only way you get comfortable, the only way you get confidence is doing it. And now I have a skill set that a lot of people don't have, because they fear that. They fear talking to the media, or they fear talking in front of crowds. But the only reason I got that to be able to feel like, oh, that's no big deal. I can do that. Anytime the Red Cross needs somebody on camera, I'll do it, because I'm comfortable now, because I tried it. And you're going to hit a wall. You will say something wrong, and you will know, especially in the age of social media, right? People are going to pick, block it. Right? If it's not a positive thing, if it's not going to help you grow as a person, listen to the feedback. And if some of it resonates, learn, grow from it. If not, throw it away.
I think too, and that's, you made a great point, and I think it's one that's underutilized, and it's emergency management and leadership. Both of them, they're not supposed to be reactive. They're supposed to be a proactive, engaging. It's intentional, purposeful, engaging process. And I feel like a lot of emergency management is done in a reactive area. It's a reactive in how we respond to things, because we're still stuck in the first response type mentality. And a lot of first response is reacting or responding to an emergency or disaster. And I like to use the word respond as it relates to having proper training and planning and all that. But a lot of it too, there's a level of reaction that takes place that we need to be able to avoid as emergency managers and leaders. And that comes from, as you mentioned, intentionally engaging in the community. And a leader, followers don't go, it should not have to go to the leader. The leader should go to the followers. Yeah. And that's a big, I heard it said once, and I think it was John Maxwell, and in his talk, and he said that you hear leaders, some people say it is lonely at the top. And he said, if you're lonely at the top, you're not a leader, you're a hiker. You got to go to the people you're giving service to, and you got to serve them, and you got to add value to them. And that doesn't happen unless you go actively do that. But so to expect people just to come to you all the time because you have an open door policy, it's unrealistic. But as it brings us back to leadership, it's a very proactive, engaging process. And it's, you revise, like you said, don't do something right, you can look back on it, you make correction, you do it again, and you get better and better. Next thing you know, you're actively engaging, you got followers, and you're influencing, and you're able to, as you did with Disney, working in multiple countries and being able to develop programs, but then transition that to Walmart and be able to work through COVID. And that happens through being very proactive. If you were reactive, you would have been way behind the ball, and you would have lost tons of money, and you would have lost tons of people. And so I just really want to touch on that. I think that was a great lead into the communication and being able to really apply what it is that we do as emergency managers, is just ultimately doing the job more actively and less reactively. Where do you stand on that? Do you see that plays any role in how we've done things ultimately overall as a profession over the last few years?
I think it's definitely, the profession has shifted, especially since when I started. And I feel very fortunate that I started in the planning space, in the community planning space, and learning how things are interconnected. Because I think for a long time, you hit the nail on the head, that it's been the first responders profession, and almost like you've been a first responder, you go retire as an emergency manager, and which doesn't discredit, because they're two very separate types of work and types of leadership ability that is needed for them. Trying to get somebody around the table to talk about community planning is very different than putting out a fire. And is it leadership skills? Yes, it's just different. And I'm seeing it now, Dan, that there's an acknowledgement of that. There's difference. And I just think there's more and more people in the field now. There's degrees. You can get a PhD in emergency management. So the field has changed. But I think that when it's still sexy, right? The person coming from that first response universe, people like that, right? To attach to that. And so the more that we can keep this shift of recognizing the value of both skill, all the different skill sets that it takes, I think is important. And it gets more to the credibility of the profession at large, because it's not just one thing. You just because you were a police officer does not mean you're going to be a good community planner, and vice versa. It's saying, here's an emergency manager and here's what an emergency manager does. And I think sometimes we lack clarity on that, on the true definition, because we are all jacks of all trades, right? Every day is different. Some days you're doing the public information officer's job. The next day you're out at a community meeting. Next day you're writing a hazard mitigation plan. The next day you're activating the EOC, right? It is that, but what does that say? You're the conductor of all of those universes. And that's a very unique skill set.
I like the use of the word conductor, because you really are. And there's so many different ways that you could set up people, depending on how they relate. You can go to sports, you're the coach. Whether you're as a magician, you're a conductor. But
Yeah.
as an emergency manager, you really are a coordinator, supporter of those that are out there in responding, or planning, or training, whatever it may be. You help that support and coordination, which is why a lot for me is, as a practitioner, and I'm pivoting to be more of a resource for the practitioner in the profession, as a way you did when you're transitioning out to your own business as a consultant. So, and this is a question I've actually brought up multiple times, is that we're seeing more and more business owners that they're doing emergency management, and they're opening up consulting firms, or they're becoming a consultant themselves. And as you mentioned, lights and sirens are sexy. That's one of those things that it's easy to focus on response, because that's what everybody sees. They don't necessarily see all the engagement that takes place, the training that takes place, the preparing, the planning, and it's a lot of behind the scenes, and there's a lot of unsexy work, really. But it's so beneficial, and that's what real leaders do. They're not always looking for the spotlight. They're supporting those who may be in the spotlight. So as we continue to see more and more consulting firms and individuals opening their own business to do emergency management, do you feel that in itself will help promote the profession in a better light towards saying, hey, look at us, put us in the more of the spotlight of what we're doing? Is that even myself and transitioning to become a business owner? But is that me doing that going to, in your opinion, I should say, help enlighten the community, or will it take away from those who are doing the job in an office working for a city and a county and a state?
Oh, Dan, I think it'll supplement it. I think it definitely shows the diversity. And I think it actually gets to the person who's starting their own company, and their why, and the type of work that they want to be doing. I'm a planner at heart, and I really miss that, just being in the weeds and helping with community planning. And I'm so excited. We just won a contract to work with a Native American tribe, and it's on the most non-sexy thing you can think of, on a hazard mitigation plan. But I am so excited about it, because I'm now going to be given this opportunity, not only to write the plan, but I'm going to be teaching. I'm going to put together almost like a train the trainer for the tribe, so that they can then do this in-house next time around, that they won't have to go outside and use precious dollars, federal dollars that they've been given for their planning, and give a skill set to somebody. And that warms your heart. And I think if the company that you're starting and your own consulting warms your heart and what you're doing, that can only help the field. And that was when I was in the public service more so than the private sector, seeing kind of the gaps and how we incorporated Native American planning into traditional emergency management was something I always thought was like, fix that. We got to figure out a way to make sure that they have a voice around the table. But when everything's so siloed, right, from funding, it's hard to do that if you're in public service emergency management, but not when you're running your own company. And that's your job, to connect the dots. So it's already paying off.
And that's a great point. That's the way I look at it as well. I feel like there's more intention when you have your own, when you're trying to ultimately make a living doing what you love to do without working a job. When you're trying to be an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
and you're trying to make a living doing what you love to do, there's more intention there to actually go out and find that money that's going to help you support yourself or your family, or
put food on the table at the end of it, and pay your employees.
And that's when it comes back to the marketing aspect. I put myself out there more when it comes to relating what it is. Oh, this is what I'm doing. This is why I'm doing it. This is why it's important. And this is how I can help you. And this is why you should want me to help you. That kind of thing. And I think that allows me to become a better promoter of not only the profession, but me as a professional, but also to help other professionals get better in what they're doing. And my whole approach to do things is to promote the practitioner and the profession. It's not necessarily have my own consulting firm where I go write plans and stuff, which ultimately I've done my whole career, and I think I'm good at it, and it's very beneficial. I feel my calling is to really support the practitioner and the profession and help grow it. And I feel like there's nobody really out there doing that at a level that we would normally see it, like in the marketing capacity. FEMA can't do it. So they can do more. There's more commercials and more activity coming from, which is amazing. But I can, as an individual, I can market, I can promote, I can advertise, I can really drive a vision for where we should be going that not a lot of people could do. And I think it could definitely aid, especially in partnership and collaboration with others who are doing the same thing. And that's where I feel like we could approach emergency management differently if we thought about it and applied it more, sometimes almost in a business sense, on how we do our day to day. Because it does make sense. You got to market your business. You got to know how to do the accounting and budgeting and applications and hiring and firing and project management. And all that comes from business ownership and learning how to really market and be an advertiser and be an account. These are all things that happen, as you said, as an emergency manager. You do it all, right? You're a jack of all trades, master of none. But we would like to get to a point where that's not the case, where you could specialize in a field of a particular field of mitigation or prevention or recovery, and you can specialize that and you can work that because that's what you want. Versus, I have to take this job. I'm a department of one, and I am trying really hard to really get across that. Just because you're a department of one or a person of one that's doing the job, it doesn't mean you're alone. As if you're actively engaging and collaborating and networking, you can have a whole list of resources at your disposal that can really help you do your job. Even if you are a department of one, quote. And I feel like that's where you consulting, like the Resiliency Initiative and other things that are out there, can really help promote emergency management in a more direct approach. Where you feel like I'm on the ball there or I'm off the
ball? Oh, hands down. I totally agree with you, Dan. And I think you are filling a niche that badly needs to be filled as far as just promoting the profession, helping professionalize it, and just giving resources out, connecting those dots to people. And you have a high degree of freedom when you're on your own, when you're running your company, because you're making those choices. And when you got skin in the game, where you got to put food on the table and feed your employees, right? It's a totally different approach. I'm not saying everybody's probably loyal to their employer, but it's just different. And I think it's a brilliant idea, Dan. And there's teaming agreements. People team up to do things together. I'm putting it out in the universe when you're on your own.
You know, I'm 100% on board with that. And I think, honestly, I feel like it's needed as well. I mean, I was talking to someone else, and I won't name names, but there was a sense of competition there. I'm like, I'm not in competition. I want you to succeed as well. So I don't feel like there's a sense of competition. There's just a sense of helping each other and collaborating and partnership. And if there's something I can't do, I know you can do it. I'm going to promote you. I'm going to say, hey, I can't do that for you. I'm not very good at it, but I know somebody and I can make that connection. So I feel like that's very important. And I feel like there's no competition because I want you to succeed just as badly as you do. I want to support you. How can I support you is where I'm coming from. And And
And to
to heard
be,
that you come from, you're developing, you're growing it, and you're actually taking it over. That's amazing. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to feature it as well.
and Dan, I would say that people shouldn't fear the competition because actually it makes us all better. And like I said, you can a lot of times team up on a project and work together and get each other's back. Hey, this one's not right for me. I've already had so many amazing friends like say, hey, this one's too small for us, or we just don't have time. What do you think about doing this? We help each other. The pie is big enough, Dan. There is so much opportunity and so much work out there that really can make an impact and help that local emergency manager become the force multiplier for that team of one. This is a lot of times how they get business done, right? They can get money to hire a contractor, but they can't get money for headcount. And so there's so much. I've only been doing this for 4 months, but for me to already have a few contracts under my belt shows with me that the business model is sound, and having it be a competitive process is actually good. It's actually good.
Yeah, it very well it can be, but it also keeps you honest, and it keeps you
Yeah.
moving forward, and it keeps you, growing as a person. But it keeps you elaborating on your skills, and there's so much that it can do. But I feel like there's such a need, as you said, the pie is so big. Yeah, there's opportunities are there, but the need is so much. They're so relevant right now, and I think we can do nothing but promote not only profession but each other if we work in closer collaboration with each other. And we could ultimately too make those partnerships, as you mentioned. And that line of thinking is where I feel like we need to be on every scale, is being able to. That's one of the reasons why I love emergency management so much as well. I love emergency management, and one of the reasons why is because the level of collaboration and networking that takes place in emergency management, and the willingness to help each other. That is coming from educational law enforcement. I did everything. I did law enforcement, I did fire, I did EMS. So I responded to all that. I was licensed to do all that. And but in outside of that, if I worked with law enforcement, of course, law enforcement don't like fire. Fire don't like them. They don't like EMS, or the military's involved, the state and the city and the county. And there's so much conflict. But to be in emergency management, it's like, what can we do to help you? Like, how can we make you better? I have a plan you need. I'll give it to you. It's so open and willing to work and partner that I love it so much. And I want to just promote it as best I can. And I appreciate all the work that you do in it as well, as that's exactly what you've done and what I've watched you do since I met you. And I think that's helped not only drive professionals, as you are a mentor yourself, but the profession in general has gotten better by watch what you've done and then imitate that.
Thank you, Dan. No, I'm like you. I love this field. I'm so thankful every day that I fell into this, and because every day is different. Who would have known? Back in '99, starting out writing Y2K plans, and in 2022, I'm president and CEO of my own business. Who would have
Y2K,
guessed?
I remember Y2K. But I know we're both passionate about what we do, and that's one of the things I love about finding and bringing people on to talk to, is that you share that passion and you share that desire to really not only grow as individuals, but really grow each other and grow the profession. And I think that in itself is true leadership, and the desire for the continued effort that is put into it is, as I mentioned, it can be duplicated by people who are watching, and that is, for me, is a big aspect of what I'm trying to not only accommodate by the show, the podcast, but by the summits that I'll be putting on and the other. There's some stuff I would love to throw at you when we get off the recording, because I'm not ready to announce it to the whole community yet, but it's going to be large in how it really promotes the professional and really invest in them. And I feel like that's the key point, is it's investment into not only them, but the way in which we do things could ultimately grow and really change the profession and multiply how fast it happens. And I think, and of course, right now in my head, it's an idea that I'm playing with, but I would love to hear your opinion. For all those out there, I would like to just leave real quick for everybody, for you to just let them know where to find the Resiliency Initiative and you, and then what kind of services you offer so that they could benefit from it.
Thanks, Dan. And I just so appreciate this opportunity. You're an amazing steward of this profession. And just to anybody listening, give back, be a mentor. It doesn't matter where you are. And you might be just starting out, you could still mentor somebody else. And that's how I've really walked. walked up the ladder is because I've had some amazing mentors my entire career. So I am your mentor. I'm putting it out to your listener base. If I can ever be of help, you can get me at Andrea at theresiliencyinitiative.com. The website is www.theresiliencyinitiative.com. And if I can ever support your work, my team and I, we focus more on the crisis and business continuity plan writing for kind of both on the public sector and private sector side, and then training and exercise, ICS focused for the public sector, and then doing like C-suite engagement, tabletop exercises.
And just to throw another note in that, C-suite opportunity for engagement is amazing, and that should be something we intentionally do as emergency managers, engage the C-suite, the leadership. And so I appreciate that very much. Your information will be featured in your speaker profile for anybody that was out there watching. You should be able to click the button right below this video and gain access to the website, or copy and paste the email address to be able to contact Andrea and reach out for more. If you want more information for me and some of the stuff we talked about, that'd be great. You can DM me, you can email me, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. Overall, I appreciate you taking the time to participate in the summit, watch this video where Andrea was able to share her experience and ultimately add value to you. I hope you really took the time to listen, to take notes, and to really understand the level of experience that came from Andrea as she came from knowing nothing to where she is now and owning her own business, and the quality of leadership she brings to the community and the profession overall. I am Daniel Scott. My desire here is for us to get better and to get better together.